welcome to the Base Path Podcast, brought to you by New England Baseball Journal. I'm your host, Dan Guttenplan, and today we're going to do an MIAA preview. That's the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association. This is all the public and private schools in the state of Massachusetts, and we'll do that with our beat guy, Pat Donnelly. Pat, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Excited for the season.
Yeah, this will be your second year on the MIAA beat, and you came over last year kind of after doing hockey, which is primarily your number one sport, but you did a great job with baseball. You were covering a lot of the Catholic Conference games throughout the year, logging pitch counts, doing everything, kind of really getting your feet in there. So I appreciated that. What were kind of your first impressions last year of doing the baseball season?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a similar theme last year, but it was all about the Catholic Conference last year, which it's not terribly surprising. You know, you come over from hockey where it's St. John's Prep, BC High, CM had a great year this year. St. John Shrewsbury too. We'll be talking a lot about those teams.
Yeah.
So it was, a lot of whether it's Catholic Conference, Bay State Conference. You had the Hockomock last year. So a lot of, you got it feels like there's a little more public representation than there is in hockey sometimes. Yeah. But a lot of parity last year.
Yeah, I just did a Catholic Conference preview, just doing a few of these conference previews online this last couple of weeks leading into the MIAA season. And which team was it? The Catholic Conference team won the hockey championship, didn't they?
Yeah, CM beat St. John Shrewsbury, and there were a couple of players who I'm watching the game. Like, I know them from baseball last year, like Connor Sechrist on Shrewsbury. A couple of guys on CM, and it was interesting about them because Evan Marinofsky on the hockey side did an interesting story about the state, what that matchup said about the state of Massachusetts high school hockey, because CM had an 8th grader starting in that, and Shrewsbury had a kid they called up from JV before the tournament and said, hey, you're going to be the starter.
Wow.
Their guys were struggling.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And Shrewsbury had a couple of guys last year. I remember in the state championship baseball game, I think their left fielder, I think it's Jackson Fournier, was a freshman. So, yeah, it's not unusual at the MIA level to see these guys make immediate contributions as freshmen. We should do something at some point in the season, just like immediate, freshman contributors, just a list of guys who are really having success right away. But why don't we we'll start with kind of the teams to watch. We put together a preseason top 10, or you did, and it's a lot of those Catholic Conference schools at the top from last year. But let's start. Who do you have as your favorite this year? Number one team in the MIAA?
Yeah, I mean, first thing, 4 of the top 5 are from the Catholic Conference.
Yep.
So number one, I give the nod to BC High, as the defending champs. Whether or not that holds throughout the season, we'll see. They lost a lot of guys, Liam Kineen, Sam Keene being chief among them. But they've got a lot coming back, too. Wyatt Miller, Jackson Richard, Andrew Flaherty, Tommy O'Donnell, and the list goes on. Brody Beal. There's a lot coming back, and a lot of guys who have key experience from a deep run last year. Yeah,
I was talking to Coach Healy the other day, and he was kind of playing possum, we're not the favorites this year, we're not the team to beat. I guess they graduated their top 6 pitchers, which is that seems like a lot, but a lot of these guys who are, experienced just don't have the experience on the mound, but, they may have opportunities to take the mound this year. He said over the next week or two, they were going to kind of figure out who were going to be the guys through scrimmages to really take the mound for them. But he really said Xaverian is the team that has the most back this year.
Yeah, Xaverian really caught my eye. They're number 2 for me going into the year. They lost some high-end guys like Charlie Camella, but they still bring back a huge core, especially on the mound. Pat Rhodes and Paul McCarthy were 2 of the best pitchers in the Catholic Conference, let alone the state last year. They can both get deep into games. They're both committed. Then you got Jackson Morse, Nolan Rapoli, Jack O'Neill, and that's not even getting into the guys I haven't mentioned, whether it's infield or outfield. They really look like they could be the team to beat this year.
Yeah, they definitely have the most back in terms of experience on the mound in the Catholic Conference, which makes a huge difference. And those guys, not only do they have experience dominating. I think Pat Rhodes, he might have gone 7-0. One of those guys that they have was like 7-0 on the mound last year. Jerry Lambert's team is always competitive. They won a state championship. I want to say it was like their COVID year. I think it was 2020 or 2021. So they aren't too far removed from that. That he's got those guys well coached and well developed, to have an opportunity to play at the next level. They have a lot of commits too. I want to say Pat Rhodes might be a Tufts commit. They have a lot of guys who are going to be committed to playing college. At number 3, it looks like you have St. John Shrewsbury. They were a D1 finalist last year. They have a ton back too.
Yeah, and one of the guys I mentioned, Connor Sechrist, he's back in the infield. They lose Brady Shea, who is, one of our Player of the Year candidates. Noah Basgard, too. He's off to Stonehill. But they got Jack Forges, who I think batted over 500, if I'm remembering off the top of my head.
Yeah, definitely in the Catholic Conference he did.
Yeah, Andrew Schmidt, Braden Mercier. So many guys they did a ton of damage at the plate. Not only they got the dominating pitching from guys like Shea, but, they also got it done at the plate, and they got key experience from reaching the finals last year. So does Xaverian. They made the semifinals last year. So it's a lot of firepower returning and experience. That's the key here.
Yeah, and you wonder how much carryover there is from the competitiveness of playing these big games last season, because Shrewsbury played Xaverian, they played BC High, they played St. John's Prep. All these guys throughout the regular season were so battle tested, and then they really emerged at that conference in the state tournament. Really emerged as just a dominant one, and we saw that kind of happen with the Hockomock a few years ago, where Franklin and Taunton would just they'd play these fiercely competitive games against each other. Then they'd make the state tournament and kind of go on their runs, and they'd always end up 2 years in a row, at least, they met each other in the finals. And I have a feeling the Catholic Conference, there might be some carryover too from last year, where all these teams played these big competitive games. But number 4, you have Braintree, which is your first team in the top 5 that is not a Catholic Conference school.
Yeah, Braintree I'm really high on among the publics. They reached the quarterfinals last year, 19-4. They were kind of the top of the class in the Bay State Conference last year. Is them, Wellesley, Weymouth a little bit. They lose Hayden Regan, who was one of the best guys in the state last year. But what stands out to me is the returning guys they have on the mound. Luke Joyce, because I saw Braintree once or twice last year, and Luke Joyce was really impressive. So wasn't Max DeRoche. And Sean Canavan, who's another guy I recognize from hockey. They're all coming off strong seasons and should be even better this year. Yeah,
Sean Canavan committed to UMass Lowell last fall. Luke Joyce, I think, is in 2027, so he's only a sophomore this year. You saw him, I think, as a freshman dominate on the mound. So Braintree, I know Bill O'Connell is super excited about his team this year, but that's a tough league too. The Bay State Conference has 8 or 9 really good D1 prospects. So, that'll be competitive too. And, like I said, some of that carries over from year to year. The Catholic Conference, you see, so tough last year, expect them to be tough this year. I think the Bay State Conference is probably right up there with the Hockomock as a 1B type of power conference in the MIAA. Who is your number 5 team?
Yeah, number 5, we get into St. John's Prep. They reached the quarterfinals last year. They had St. John's Shrewsbury on the ropes for a little bit. St. John's Prep, had some ups and downs in the regular season. They got hot at the right time, which is kind of all that matters when you get into the MIAA tournament. It looked like they were going to make a deep run, but you lose the heartbreaker like that. They lost Aiden Driscoll, but kind of like all the other Catholic Conference teams, they didn't have to reload at all. They just have such a strong core coming back. You got Will Shaheen, James Willett, Nick Lembo, Rowan Cormier, Braden Hurley, all these guys who are among a slew of commits and should lead the way.
Yeah, you look at their roster. I was looking at their roster the other day, and it's just a lot of 6'2", 6'3", 220-pound multi-sport athletes. Yep. And St. John's Prep is good across the board at almost every sport. They're always competing for state championships. A lot of these guys are doing it in different sports. So keep an eye on them. They could definitely make a big move. It's going to be, so whoever comes out of that conference is going to be so battle tested. Who's your number 6 team?
Number 6, we got another public, Plymouth North, reigning D2 champs. DC Brown was our player of the year last year. They lose him. That's a big loss. But, you got guys like Matt Nardone, who had a lot of power at the plate last year. Will Novak, too. Those were 2 guys who were playing their best baseball at the right time and, really at the forefront of that title run, along with DC Brown. So they're back in the fold. You also got Jake Novak and Noah McKenzie in the infield and the outfield, respectively. Again, one of the top publics to watch for Plymouth North. Yeah,
he won our MIAA Player of the Year. DC Brown, I'm talking about. which kind of was a surprise. I remember going into the state tournament, we were talking about maybe Liam Kineen, some BC High guys, a lot of guys in the Catholic Conference that were really good. Xaverian had a couple of pitchers that were almost undefeated. And then he just put on a show in the state tournament. He had like 2 lights out outings. I think he also performed at the plate.
Yep.
Dwayne Follett's team is really always competitive. They're a D2 program. So, yeah, and a lot of these names are familiar. Will Novak, Matt Nardone. I remember them both getting hot during the state tournament last year.
Yeah, I remember with DC Brown, because I was looking back at it, last week when I was coming up with, the rankings and our watch list for players. And I don't think DC Brown was in our 10 candidates for MVP, let alone other players to watch. But he just had such a great run in the state tournament. If I remember correctly, too, last year he had multiple no-hitters, maybe a couple grand slams, definitely several home runs. So he was the total package, and he got a lot of support on the roster, and that's all back.
Yeah, he's like when you're drawing it up as a kid playing in the backyard and you're like playing an imaginary game. All of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm 4 for 4 with 4 home runs. This isn't realistic. I got to scale this back a little. He went on one of those types of runs in the state tournament last year. Number 7, you have another Catholic Conference team here, CM, and you said their hockey team's coming off a state championship. I wonder, are a lot of these guys carryovers?
Liam McKinney is one, and he's one of the guys I'm pretty excited about going into the season. CM, they were 9-11 last year. They had their ups and downs. So maybe kind of going down a little bit here, putting them at 7. But, you talk about in the Catholic Conference, iron sharpening iron. And, when you get to the postseason, that they're battle tested. And so they're one to watch for me. You got Sean Davick, Derek Then, Marshall Kellum, Luke Long, and then Liam McKinney, who was really strong as a freshman last year, especially in the outfield and at the plate. He can pitch too, so he'll probably get more opportunity for that this year, I'd imagine. So CM, I think, is one that's a little bit of a boomer bust pick for me, putting them at 7, but I'm excited about them and McKinney.
Yeah, it's hard because, if a team's like 5th in the Catholic Conference, they might be like the 8th best team in the state, but they might go like 10-10.
They're just beating up on each other.
Yeah, I think I saw Liam McKinney had a game-tying goal in the state championship hockey game, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
at least he was a factor in it. I know that.
Yeah. All right, number 8, you have Weymouth, and they have Jack Reyes back. I didn't even realize that. I remember doing stuff on him like 2 years ago, and I saw he's still at Weymouth. I was like, is this an old little report here on Weymouth? But he's still there, I guess.
Yeah, so Weymouth for me, it comes down to the pitching. You got Jack Reyes, he's committed to Holy Cross. Matt Oates, who's a big 2-way prospect for them too. He can bring a good bat at the plate. And Andrew Daly, who I know you've highlighted already, and one of the best bats in the state, could be MVP in a very strong Bay State conference. But when you got 2 pitchers you can trot out at any time like those guys, you always have a chance.
Yeah, I forgot about Andrew Bailey. I was putting together a league preview, and his coach reached out and was just like, look, he's our best player. Like, you got to have him on the list, which that was my fault. He is a stud. He's a reigning Bay State MVP, so absolutely should have been on that list. Number 9, you have Merrimack Valley Conference team, North Andover.
Yeah, North Andover, I remember last year, I don't think they started that well, if memory serves, but they had a great finish to the season. Dom Peffine, who was one of the best lefties in the state on the mound last year, that you lost him, but you got plenty back. You got Zach Faro, Cole Mullen on the mound, Michael Phelps, not to be confused.
Yeah. And 21-time gold medalist.
Yeah, and Jake Jackson. So, I mean, Merrimack Valley Conference is like, you got North Andover and Andover, 2 teams that were in the mix a lot last year, and wouldn't surprise me if either of them are kind of in our top 10 throughout the season. And you got the Scarlet Knights, they got a lot coming back, and Zach Faro was one who was really impressive last year.
Yeah, they have a really good tradition, North Andover. They had Sebastian Keene was there, I want to say, in like 2018, won a state championship there, and they're always in the mix. They make good tournament runs every year. Sometimes they'll do it as lower seeds and get through some favorites to get really good tournament runs. So they're well coached. They're always a good bet to have, top 10, top 15 type of team in the MIAA. And then number 10 is kind of the wild card that a lot of coaches are talking about right now is, they could win a state championship or they could be, maybe not in the top 10 at the end of the year. What do you think of Bishop Feehan going into the year?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of in that CM boat where it's a little bit of a boomer bust pick. You got maybe the two best pitchers in the state with Brody Bumilla, who's committed to Texas. And, when you got a kid committed to a big time program like that, they're always on the radar.
Yeah.
And Andrew Shute, who's, I believe, Northeastern, and they got a new coach, Joe Breen, this year. Like we said a little bit earlier with some of these teams, anytime you can trot out pitching talent like that, you're always going to have a chance to win. The problem is, like you mentioned, Bumilla with, maybe not 100% coming into the year. At what point do they get him back? And, can they count on him down the stretch? Or, when you get to the state tournament, it's one game for the rest of your lives, and you have a guy like that you can put on the mound, you're always going to have a chance.
Yeah. So they were 11-10 last year, and they did have those two guys last year too, Brody Bumilla and Andrew Shute. Joe Breen, who's the coach, he was not there last year, and he's a really good coach with GBG over the summer. He's coached both these guys throughout their entire career. So I think that's a good addition to have Joe there. But like I said, 11-10. Brody Bumilla, he had some elbow pain. We did a story on him right after he committed to Texas. And he was even, talking about possibly shutting down, but he was able to kind of get ramped back up on the mound. And then he suffered a sprained ankle, I think, during the basketball season. He's also a really good basketball player. So between those two issues, the elbow and the sprained ankle, he wasn't ready to start immediately when the team came back out for spring practice. It looks like Joe's plan is to get Brody back on the mound by mid-April. And who knows, it might be a slow start. It might be a couple innings here and there as he kind of ramps up to try to get ready for the postseason. But like I said, they were 11-10 last year. So if you don't get Brody back for more than, a couple innings here and there until May, they're just going to try to have to stay afloat. And then if they're fully healthy going into the state tournament, then you got a Northeastern commit and a Texas commit as your 1 and 2 starter. They're going to be really tough to beat, especially if they don't get like rainouts and anything that messes with the rotation. And you could just go, Bumilla shoot, like in a state tournament format. That would be really tough to beat. But a lot's got to fall into place there, and we'll see what happens there. So that was your top 10. Now let's take a look. You also did a preseason all-MIAA. So this is like a 25-man roster. And we'll probably go through this a little bit quicker than we did the top 10, but I do want to kind of give these guys looks. And then at the end, just try to keep in mind, a couple of these guys who may be in the running for MIAA Player of the Year. And then I'll kind of ask you for 2 or 3 of these guys that you think are favorites to be MIAA Player of the Year.
Yeah.
But we're starting on the mound with basically a couple of guys who we were just talking about with Bishop Fian.
Yeah, Brody Bumilla and Andrew Shute. Bumilla, he's the top pitcher in New England for 2026. And 6'8", 240, committed to Texas. You can surpass 95 with your fastball. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And you just work our way down the mound here. You got Josh Doney at St. Mary's. He's a UMass Lowell commit. He was a workhorse last year, helped them get to the D3 title game.
Yep.
Chris Gillette at Andover. Him and his brother Ryan are, make up one of the better batteries in the state. Chris is an Amherst commit. Ryan behind the plate is a Bowdoin commit. You got Luke Joyce, who we mentioned at Braintree. He was 7-1 as a freshman last year. He was really good. Scott Longo, who's been a guy we've talked about a lot in the last few years, and he's going to be key for Milton's chances this year. He was 3-1 last year, 1.83 ERA. He had a no-hitter in the playoffs. A usual suspect there. And then Jack Reyes, someone we mentioned already. Holy Cross commit, 7-1, ERA under 1 last year. He was fantastic in the regular season and his limited playoff appearances. Pat Rhodes at Xaverian, another guy, 7-0. He was the guy we were thinking of. 34 strikeouts, kept batters to a 183 average. So one of the pitchers to watch there for sure.
Yeah, a lot of these guys are the type of guys I was talking about where you're like, oh, he's still in high school. It's the guys who have had so much success at the MIA level over the last few years, and it's amazing that they're still in high school. Scott Longo, he's a 2-time state champion at Milton. They won in 2022 and 2023, and he had a big part in that. He was on the mound in some huge games for them. Like you said, Jack Reyes, Holy Cross commit, he's had a lot of success, and Pat Rhodes was the guy we were thinking about who was undefeated. Luke Joyce is really an interesting 2027 prospect, left-handed pitcher. He was 7-1 last year. So, yeah, this is a good list of pitchers. I would not want to be facing off against a team like this. Let's take a look in the infield. Got a BC High guy, a Xaverian guy, a St. John's Shrewsbury guy, a St. John's Prep guy. So 4 of the 7 infielders are from the Catholic Conference.
Yeah, a lot of Catholic Conference guys here, and plenty more that we may have not have mentioned. You got Wyatt Miller, who was huge down the stretch for BC High last year, and he was a big part of their championship win, game-winning run, made the final out. Also had 5 stolen bases in a game this past summer.
Yep.
So a guy that very athletic and putting pressure on the base paths throughout the game. Jackson Morse at Xaverian, George Mason commit. Had a strong summer coming off a strong spring last year. Tyler Adamo at Linfield, he was Cape Ann League MVP, 17 stolen bases. Linfield went 20-3 last year, and I believe D4. He's a Columbia commit. Jack Forgas, batted .625 in the playoffs and .527 during the regular season. He's a UMass Lowell commit, only struck out 4 times last year.
Wow.
Will Shaheen, who was, appeared kind of throughout the infield, but mostly at short and second for the Prep last year, batted .324, had 4 triples, 7 extra base hits in total. Then you get into some more publics in Pittsfield with Maury Freed, who, one of the better prospects in 2026 with New England, has a lot of pop. This summer he had a 105.8 exit velo, uncommitted prospect there. And then a Salvia Regina commit, rounding out our infielders with Phil Lombardi from Tewksbury. Batted .487, 26 RBIs. He was the Merrimack Valley D2 MVP, led the conference with 37 hits.
Nice. Yeah, I like that you have guys outside just the Division I programs in here too. Maury Freed, 105.8 exit velocity. That's high. That's like college numbers right there. And then at Tewksbury had a really good year last year. They made the tournament with Matt Feld as a coach. And they won a couple of games in the tournament too. And then who was your other guy? Linfield. Yeah, Linfield player. I think they're Division III, reigning Cape Ann League MVP, who's committed to Columbia. So those are some good finds for you, getting those guys some love, even though they're not Division I, Catholic Conference programs. So that's nice. You got 5 outfielders here, and once again, a few here that aren't those D1, Catholic Conference programs.
Yeah, starting off, Will Norris from Andover, who was a big get for them last year, coming over from Central Catholic. He's a Wofford commit, hit .417 last year, played error-free in the outfield, drove in 11 runs, OPS over 1,000. So a guy that was a really big factor for them offensively. Jackson Richard, who was a guy we talked about a lot with BC High, error-free in center, batted .314, 15 RBIs, stole 12 bases. And then, some more publics. You got Nick Pedroli from Hopkinton, Tri-Valley All-Star last year, .355 at the plate, 18 runs, 13 RBIs, 12 stolen bases, had just 1 error in the outfield. Ben Sherry from Durfee, Southeast Conference MVP last year, error-free in center field, so you're sensing a theme with these outfielders. .422 at the plate, another big OPS, swipe 19 bags. And then Andrew Daly, who we mentioned with Weymouth, as we said, probably their best player and can do a lot of damage with the bat.
Yeah, it is like when you watch these high school games, it does catch your eye when there's a center fielder who just can cover a ton of ground, doesn't, clean out there, doesn't make any errors, and has a great arm. Like, that's such a advantage for these high school teams. And then, yeah, like we said, Andrew Daly at Weymouth has been doing it. He's been productive for a long time. Will Norris, he started his career at Central Catholic, transferred to Andover last year. He was on Team Massachusetts last summer, and he's been just productive everywhere he went. I remember Coach O'Connell from Braintree was saying after the Team Massachusetts experience, Will Norris was one of his favorite players. He's just a stud. You got a couple of catchers here. And like you had already mentioned, Ryan Gillette from Andover.
Yeah, Ryan Gillette, we already mentioned him. Really good gunning down runners, trying to steal bases, and him and his brother Chris forming that battery there. And another brother with a battery here, Josh Doney, we mentioned him at St. Mary's, and we have Kyle Doney, both UMass Lowell commits. He's got a pretty impressive pop time of 1.9 seconds, and another guy who was integral to St. Mary's run to the D3 title game last year.
Yeah, St. Mary's has been good. They had Avon Cabral a few years ago. I think they won a state championship with him. He's at Northeastern now. So really good program, proud tradition at St. Mary's. They've been good in the state tournament historically and even in the last few years. These are the two-way prospects. They are at least two-way prospects at the high school level, and who knows? It just seems like more and more guys are following the Shohei Ohtani route and trying to extend that to the college level. So We'll see if these guys can do it. But you have 4 two-way players here.
Yeah, Matt Stewart in Chelmsford. He was, a big power bat for them last year. He hit .333 with 14 RBIs. On the mound, he went 5-1, 1.62 ERA, 55 strikeouts in 37 innings. So really efficient on the mound. He plays first and third, too. At Seekonk, Tyler Kroppis is a guy we talked about last year, helped them repeat in D4 for the title. Left-hander that struck out 123 batters last season. Oof. He went 7-1. He's committed to Eastern Tennessee State. Hit .357, 18 RBI. So plenty capable with the bat in his hands, too. The other guy, Liam McKinney, we talked about him a lot with CM. Last year, he bat .353. His OPS was 1.117. 14 runs, struck out just 4 times. And he's very athletic in the outfield and will probably have a bigger opportunity to pitch this year as a left-hander. And then Hayden Ruth at Georgetown, Cape Ann co-MVP with Tyler Adamo at Linfield last year. He's committed to Lycoming. Georgetown was one of I remember the last remaining undefeated teams in the state last year. They're in D5. He was a force at the plate and on the mound. He was part of 2 no-hitters last year. So a guy that gets it done pretty much everywhere for them.
Yeah. These Tyler Kroppis numbers are crazy. I'm looking at those right now. 123 strikeouts in 63 innings, 7-1, 0.55 ERA. He has got to be one of your candidates, I would think, for MIA Player of the Year. Who do you think, if you were to guess, so last year we had 10 finalists. If you were to guess, maybe 3 or 4 that you think will be locks to be finalists this year?
Ooh, there's going to be a lot of Catholic Conference guys I'm forgetting. But off the top of my head, I'd go, Scott Longo from Milton, Tyler Kroppis for sure, Jack Forgays at Shrewsbury, insert any BC High power bat here. I think Jackson Morse at Xaverian too. Will Norris. There's plenty to go around here. Andrew Daly, Jack Reyes, so a couple Weymouth guys there. No shortage.
Yeah, you probably are safe just picking somebody you think's going to make a deep run in the tournament, because that's such a factor as we select that down the stretch. It's like, who got hot and went 3-0 in the state tournament and didn't allow a single run. So, you're right. One of those Catholic Conference guys is probably the way to go. But, all right, good deal. This is a great list, thorough list. You can find that on baseballjournal.com. Netting Professionals is proud to be the official netting partner of the Cape Cod League and the New England Collegiate Baseball League. Netting Professionals is in the sports business of improving athletic programs one facility at a time. Netting Professionals designs, fabricates, and installs custom netting, wall padding, windscreen, batting practice equipment, and much more for high schools, colleges, commercial facilities, and stadiums throughout the United States, while providing high-quality products and great service to numerous baseball programs throughout the New England area. To learn more and to speak to a Netting Professionals representative today, visit them at nettingpros.com. Remember, when it comes to netting, it's Netting Professionals.
Are you serious about playing your sport in college? Do you need a flexible education that allows you to maintain your practice and competition schedules while also preparing you to succeed at the next level? You should check out the University of Nebraska High School. UNHS is accredited and offers more than 100 online courses, including NCAA-approved courses to protect your academic eligibility. Students could earn a UNHS diploma or take a single course for transfer credit. Courses are college prep, self-paced, and available 24/7, 365. Enroll anytime and take up to a year to complete a course. Visit highschool.nebraska.edu today.
Before we conclude the podcast, let's go to our producer, David Yaz, for our 3 Up, 3 Down segment.
3 up, 3 down.
Yeah, welcome back to 3 Up, 3 Down, the segment. This is why they don't allow me on the microphone that often. Producer Dave here with 3 questions for each of our panelists. And we'll start with you, Dan. We're going to do predictions for the upcoming Major League Baseball season. I'm going to give you 3 predictions, and I want you to rank them in terms of most likely to least likely.
Okay.
So here are the 3. Number 1, Ellie De La Cruz hits for the cycle twice in the same season. I don't know if anyone's ever done that. I'm going to guess no. Number 2, a rookie wins the Cy Young Award. Did Paul Skeens win the Cy Young Award last year as a rookie?
I don't think so.
No? All right. We'll look that up. Number 3, the A's randomly win 8 games in a row. Ellie De La Cruz hits for the cycle twice. A rookie wins the Cy Young Award. The A's win 8 games in a row.
Oh, man. I don't think any one of the 3 is all that likely. I'd probably start with the rookie winning the Cy Young. The Dodgers have a couple of those. I don't know. I think they're both Japanese pitchers that they paid a ton of money for. So maybe that would be most likely. Number 2, I'm not a huge Ellie De La Cruz guy. Like, his metrics are crazy. He can throw across the diamond at like 105 miles an hour, but I don't know that he's consistent yet. But he can do pretty spectacular things. But 2 cycles in the same year, that seems like a lot. So I'd probably put that least like. Oh no, okay. No, the A's 8-game winning streak's got to be the least likely thing.
Well, you know, every dog has his day. Every once in a while, a weird team gets hot. And
did they sign? I thought they had like one signing this offseason that was like, oh, maybe they are trying to be competitive.
I don't know, but all right, you putting that last? All right, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the way, I can't believe we forgot our old friend Chris Sale won the National League MVP.
That's right,
last year. Pat, Ellie De La Cruz, rookie Cy Young, A's win 8 games in a row. Rank them.
Man. I'm going to be a contrarian here. I'm going to put the A's number 1 because I feel like you can just get hot and luck into it at any point in time.
Right.
You know, maybe I'm just too big of a Moneyball fan with that crazy winning streak they had 20 plus years ago. But you can luck into several wins in a row. So I'm going to go A's, rookie wins Cy Young, and number 3, Ellie De La Cruz. Because I'm getting into fantasy baseball this year. I remember reading his projection, and I think he was very inefficient at the plate last year, if memory serves. So
all right.
I don't know if once in the season is on the table for him, let alone twice.
Yeah, by the way, Dan, the A's did sign Luis Severino, which seems for a lot of money, which seems weird.
And I'm not going to pretend I know what the A's have coming up through their farm system. Too, you never like when all of a sudden they could have like Barry Zito, Tim Hudson, and Mark Mulder coming up all at once.
Right. Zito, Hudson, and Mulder aren't walking through that door, but maybe some good new guys are. All right. Second question, rank the following. Pat, you get to go first for this. In terms of likelihood. Number 1, several Major League Baseball teams allow beer sales through the 9th inning because games are shorter now. So why not? Number 2, a stadium introduces AI-powered concession serving featuring drones and robots. And number 3, Taylor Swift appears at a Major League Baseball park and becomes the darling of that team, featured frequently on television. So you got beer sales through the 9th inning, robots and drones delivering concessions, or Taylor Swift taking over baseball in the same way that she sort of took over football.
I will put Taylor Swift number 1 because I feel like if she goes to one single game, it'll be a massive story. And you could totally see her and Travis Kelce showing up at a Royals game. And it being the talk of the town for 2 weeks. It
would be good for the Royals, I think, because if she happens to like be in New York and shows up in a Yankee game wearing a Yankee hat, oh boy.
Yeah, okay. So I'll go that number 1.
Yep.
I'll go, robots and drones delivering concessions number 2, because you see those things in New York now, the little they look like Tonka trucks delivering Amazon packages on the sidewalks.
Yep.
I feel like that could show up at Yankee Stadium at any moment.
Good point.
And then number 3 would be the beer sales through the 9th inning, just because it's something that makes too much sense that no one would probably think of at the higher levels.
It does make sense. It's just the drunkenness is a factor of time, and so if games are 20% short or whatever they are. All right, Dan, beer sales, robots and drones, Taylor Swift.
Robots and drones number 1, because I feel like we're so close to that happening anyway. Have you ever been in one of those Amazon stores at the Garden? Yeah, where you don't even go to a register. You just take what you want, leave, and somehow you get charged for it. But, so I think that's probably on the horizon. Number 2, I always thought the beer sales was just a Fenway thing, because they didn't want people driving drunk after the game. But maybe it is everywhere. Yeah, I would probably say that's 2. And then Taylor Swift, so the way I was thinking it was you were saying like she's going to start dating a baseball player and then like to have that be the impact where she starts going to a bunch of games. I would think she's probably going to have a concert where she's selling tickets for $2,500 a piece this summer. So it's going to be hard to get to a baseball game. So I'll put her 3.
She's never played Fenway, has she? If she does, and she wears a Red Sox hat, then
she was at Gillette in Foxborough a couple of years ago in the pouring rain, and I remember like Belichick saying it was impressive the way that she played through it.
It was all about Taylor tonight, and she just went out there and I got to give her all the credit. All right, third and final question. These have to do with broadcasting. Major League Baseball hires the Savannah Bananas to play 4 exhibition games with teams during the season for nationally televised games. And it doesn't have to be 4. I just picked that. All right. Number 2, Major League Baseball introduces an alternate broadcast option in the way that the Manning cast has thrived, I suppose, on the NFL. In the NFL, this one features comedians. Picture Bill Burr and Billy Crystal calling a Red Sox-Yankee game. Okay, so that's got potential. And number 3, umpires begin doing press conferences after the game, explaining all their calls. So you got, Dan, you can start with this one. Savannah Bananas, nationally televised baseball games. An alternate broadcast with comedians. Doesn't have to be Bill Burr and Billy Crystal, but, or umpires do post-game press conferences.
Well, first of all, I think you should work for MLB in the marketing department because these are really good ideas.
Yeah, come on.
They need to incorporate the Savannah Bananas a lot more because it's wildly entertaining, even if it's just spring training, get a couple of these things going. So I'm going to put that 1. Number 2, what was the second one that you said?
Comedians alternative broadcast.
I love that too.
Okay.
The Phillies kind of have that with John Kruk as their regular announcer, but it's almost like an alternative thing. He's like, all he does is talk about food half the time. So that would be really cool to hear that. And I actually do watch the Manning cast during Monday Night Football games, especially if it's not one of the teams I really care about, because I think they add to it.
So you get the umpires last.
Yeah, the umpire, but that's still really a good idea because I don't know why they don't have them do that anyway.
Well, my guess is they don't want to let you too into the process because it could provoke even more scrutiny, but who knows?
It's always like one pool reporter can ask them a question after the game, but it's not on, it's on the record, but it's not like recorded or on TV or anything. It's just, they should be more transparent about it.
Yeah. All right. Excellent choices. Pat, Savannah Bananas, comedian broadcast, umpire press conferences.
I'll go, I think the same order as Dan. 1, Savannah Bananas. That's a layup.
Yeah,
number 2, the Manning cast out. They kind of like try to do that at the same time as a normal broadcast already, like when ESPN throws it to a guy in the field when they're asking Tristan Casas about his mom dying in the middle of the game. But so they kind of like have some elements of that already. So I feel like that's a pretty easy one to get going. And then number 3 is the umpires. Like that's a cross sport thing too, where like there should be way more accountability and there isn't.
They just
it just won't happen.
You're right. It's like an old school. It's the sports version of the blue code of silence of cops. Don't talk. The referees don't talk to the. Yeah, the comedian thing I think has potential. The reason I don't watch the Manning cast is I love watching football on TV, and sometimes they're not talking about the action happening on the field while the action is happening on the field, and I kind of want to know. But I think there's real room for, watching sports is supposed to be fun, right? ESPN introduced a lot of comedy into their overall umbrella of content. For example, the ESPN ads, this is ESPN ads are all hilarious.
Yeah.
And, they're, and the SportsCenter anchors often have terrific senses of humor. They tried Dennis Miller in the booth. You guys might be too young to remember.
No, I remember that.
In Monday Night Football. Yeah. And he was good, but Al Michaels, being like the old school guy, couldn't gel with them. Let's get some humor in there. But call the game. Don't be talking to some guy on the couch. I don't know. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, guys?
Well, On the Manningcast type of thing, I'm kind of in the same boat as you, where like everybody loves Red Zone, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe I just grew up watching the Patriots game start to finish. So like I like watching just one game and kind of just focusing on that. Or like I've tried like kind of in the similar line of like being able to like focus on the game. I've tried Nesson's Obstructed Views broadcasts with like Tuca and Andrew Raycroft and Patrice Bergeron during Bruins games.
Yeah.
And like it'd be one thing if like they had like the game fully on the screen and like these guys just in like a little bubble.
Yep.
But they got like the panel is I think way too big on the screen and the game's way too small.
Yeah.
So like, and I admittedly need glasses. My eyes stink, but I need to like I can't focus on the game because it's like too small on the screen.
Yeah. You can do both. You can do that. I mean, what's more fun than watching sports with friends and funny friends who make comments about how horrible that effort was or how much this pitcher sucks or something. Like, have a comedian there who can really throw some barbs. But let's watch the game. All right, terrific job to you both. None of these predictions will ever come true, but dare we dream?
May I add one support for my A's prediction? Or the A's likelihood is they have some stretches in the schedule where they feasibly could pull it off. You got at start of May, you got an end of a 4-game slate with the Rangers. Maybe you get them on a getaway day. You win that last game. Then you got 6 in a row with Miami and Seattle. And then maybe you luck into a win at the start of the Yankees series. So like you got 6 winnable games in a row and then 2 bookends that you need things to go right for you.
You heard it here first. Pat Donnelly says the A's are winning the World Series.
You got two series, the White Sox in there, but not back to back, but like maybe bounces go your way, or you got the 3 games with the Giants before 4 with the Angels. So maybe at the end of the Dodgers, the start of the Phillies series, like maybe you got some things that go your way.
What kind of odds do you think we could get on DraftKings for the A's winning 8 games in a row at some point in the season? Gotta be pretty good.
Yeah, I think pretty good.
All right.
One other point on the Manning cast this year. Bill Belichick was a regular. I think it was like the second quarter. I really enjoyed that because you would know immediately when he had an axe to grind with the team. Like if it was the Jets or something, he'd be like, "Oh, they've been making terrible decisions for 30 years now." And you're like, "Oh man."
That was the fun part of the Manning cast when you hear them go, yeah, like Belichick would go, "Oh, here we go. They're doing this again."
Yeah.
Or sometimes Eli or Peyton would call them out. Like, why would you possibly do that on 3rd down? That part was cool.
Yeah.
Because they're just saying what we're thinking in our heads.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, back to you, Dan, to wrap things up.
Okay, thanks to Pat Donnelly for joining us on the Base Path Podcast. Rate, review, subscribe to the Base Path Podcast on your preferred platform. Thanks to our producer, David Yaz. The Base Path Podcast is a Siemens Media production.
All right, I'm out. Great job.
We did it.
Sweet.